Hi, everybody. Welcome to our amazing pre-WITS, very first pre-WITS session, all about the future of audio. It's great to see you all here. My name is Beth Santos, and I'm founder and CEO of Wonderful. And if you haven't heard about Wonderful before, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. We are a global community and lifestyle brand all about helping women travel the world. And we do this through a dynamic online community. We have chapters in 50 cities all across the globe, global summits like this one, and of course, trips. But beyond just connecting women together, one thing that's really important to us is also amplifying the voices of women and underrepresented people in the travel industry and making sure that the industry is thinking about being equitable, being inclusive, being thoughtful as we all evolve. Certainly over the past year, I think we've all been thinking about how can we make travel better. And that's something that Wonderful is very, very serious about. We also created WITS. So if you've been to WITS before, welcome back. If this is your first time coming to WITS, come on and say hi to us. We have a great little chat section on, you're watching this on YouTube, so right in the comments, you can go ahead and enter into the chat who you are, where you're coming in from. So go ahead and give it a try right now. We'd love to see who is watching live and participating with us. And you can use that comment section anytime throughout this session to ask questions, share your experiences, share your feedback. We'd love to incorporate you into this. I know sometimes when you're watching something on YouTube, you kind of think like, oh, I'm just going to passively watch. But no, we want you actively part of this conversation. This is all about us using our voices, using our experiences to make travel better, to improve the way that we're marketing our travel, to amplifying the voices of women in travel. And it's going to be a really exciting session. And I see people that are already coming in, watching from Salt Lake City, watching from Utrecht in the Netherlands, Boston, Mass. That's where I am. Christine is out in San Diego. Adrienne is in Toronto. So we are all around the world. Welcome, everyone. Keep on posting and sharing where you're from. And if you have been to WITS before, as I was mentioning, welcome back. If you haven't, this is just the very beginning of all of it. We have a whole week of events going on this week, from workshops to other panel discussions like this one. And then stay tuned on Friday and Saturday. That's when our main programming is happening. We'll kick it off with a keynote with Genevieve Padalecki, who is an actress on the CW and also an incredible lifestyle influencer and activist and entrepreneur of her own. We'll go into the 2021 Bessie Awards, which is honoring women of impact in travel. We have a number of great panel discussions on Friday and then also on Saturday. And then we'll close it out with our second keynote with Dr. Gretchen Soren, who's the author and creator of the PBS documentary Driving While Black. So really great things coming up. And if you didn't know, which you should know because you're watching, this is actually the first time we've ever had completely free tickets. So share this with family and friends. We'd love to have you. I hope that we see you throughout the week. And for this special session, I wanted to say an extra special thank you to Pandora, who was our sponsor of this session and really helping make it happen. We've loved working with Pandora over the years and really grateful to have you guys back again. And let's see, what else do we have? So questions in the comment section. Keep sharing who you are. I love all of the comments that are coming in. If you still need to register for WITS online, you haven't had a chance to, we'll drop that link in the comments now, but it's just witsummit.com/online. So easy to do. And now let me go ahead and introduce the incredible panel that we have here. So let me take you to my next slide. First of all, I would like to introduce Laura Fernandez, the head of industry for travel and tourism at Pandora Media. She will be moderating. Hi, Laura.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for being here today.
Happy Monday. So excited to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. And let me introduce our other panelists who are here as well, so we can see who you'll be talking to. We have Danielle Desir, founder of Women of Color Podcasters, Vapu Manti, the director of PR and communications at Helsinki Marketing, Moya McCarthy, the vice president of Women in Music, and Leslie Ann Thompson, marketing manager at the beaches of Fort Myers and Sanibel. Hi, everybody. How are you all doing?
Wonderful.
Hi,
great.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
I am so thrilled. I think this is going to be such a great conversation. Laura, I'm going to let you take it away, and we'll be sharing.
Thank you, Beth.
Absolutely. And we'd love for you all to continue, continue in the comments, and we'll also be sharing all the different social handles for everyone who's participating so you can follow them all on social. So Laura, all for you.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the Future of Audio, this workshop that is happening during WITS this week. I am beyond amped to talk about music and podcasts and how virtual concerts have really become the norm. But I want to start by asking, what are you all listening to right now? I'm personally right now a big fan of podcasts. Atlas Obscura, one of the top travel brands, just launched their own podcast actually on Stitcher. It's a daily 15-minute show. So that's what I'm listening to. What I love about podcasts is I actually listen on my mobile phone, put in my AirPods, and then it's like someone's telling me a story. I love it, the theater of the mind that it creates. But what are all of you listening to? I'm going to kick it right to Danielle.
Yeah, so I'm also a big podcaster and I love listening to podcasts. I think I have about like 70 podcasts on my phone right now. And I love the podcast, The Offbeat Life with Debbie Arcangelo, and it talks about location independence and remote work while traveling. So I'm definitely thinking about that right now.
Awesome. Moira.
Yeah, so we've been road tripping a lot lately, and that's created a really great platform to listen in the car, which is something that as a mostly New Yorker, I never get to do.
Yeah.
So we've been doing a lot of podcasts. My husband's like very into mystery podcasts. So some of that, but then a lot of music consumption and a lot of sort of self-education on music that I've either missed over the years or is sort of foundational to our modern music. And it's really been enriching to be able to sort of have the podcasts and the music simultaneously.
Yeah, I don't think road trips are going to go anywhere anytime soon. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is like get in the car, jam out to some tunes or listen to a podcast because you have that attention that you're just looking at the beautiful scenery while you get to jam out to some music. Vapu, what are you listening to right now?
I'm a heavy user of music. A lot of playlists based by different artists. So I get introduced to different artists, new artists as well. But I think the most used for me is I love audiobooks. So everything from history to comedy for like short novels, everything. At the moment, I'm listening to a novel by Joyce Carol Oates, My Life as a Rat. That's going on, and I'm also learning Spanish.
I love that.
Through Storytel.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can use it so many ways. So.
Yeah, I mean, with audio, it's from the music to the podcast to audiobooks. I'm completely agree. I, in addition to podcasts, I started listening to audiobooks before I go to bed versus actually reading, just because I felt like it helped me actually fall asleep a little bit better. And now I'm like loving the whole audiobook piece. Leslie Ann, what are you listening to? And then where are you listening to it from? On your mobile phone, or you're listening to your Amazon Alexa, or in car?
Well, I've been a late adopter to podcasts myself. So Travel and Leisure has this really cool podcast called Let's Go Together, which is hosted by Kelly Edwards. I've been listening to some of that. And then the Brown Ambition podcast with Tiffany Alishi is more about finance-based activity and, planning your budgets and that sort of thing. I've been tapping into a little bit of that as well. Listening on my phone and tablet mostly, sometimes the PC, depending on what it is.
Very cool. We're going to have to get the list of all these recommendations up for everyone. Now, we're here to talk about how music and travel go hand in hand. And no question, Maura, you had mentioned road trips, but it's also music and podcasts are part of the planning experience to when you're actually there, to when you're coming back and you just want to remember that destination. Can you expand a little bit on why travel and audio go hand in hand? I'm going to start with Leslie Ann for this question.
Oh, I definitely think audio is just a part of the cultural DNA of a place. I mean, what is New Orleans or Memphis without jazz music? They have such a rich and vibrant music scene. You have to plan to go to the live events, the concerts, the street performers, that sort of thing. Coming from the background that I have too, I'm Jamaican, so reggae music and dancehall is such a huge part of our culture. And I find anywhere I am in the world, it's also it's an equalizer because it's a icebreaker when you're talking to people. I've been in Egypt, I've been in Dubai, I've been in Colombia, and people have come up to me, and just the name Bob Marley alone opens conversations. So it's such a huge part of the memory you can make in a place with all these festivals and events as well. I think it's definitely something people need to pay attention to.
I agree. There's one of my last business trips was to New Orleans, and it was like walking through the streets and hearing that music. I mean, I get chills just thinking about it. Danielle, why does audio and travel go hand in hand?
Yeah, I think for me as a podcaster, I found that audio brings a destination to life more intimately than video or even photos do. So I have one of my podcast episodes where I was recording live while climbing the Great Wall of China. And it's like I could see pictures of it, but like hearing myself and hearing like all the things that went around with that experience is so, so special and so uniquely captured. So I just think it really allows you to capture a destination in a very unique way.
I'm right there with you. Moira, why does travel and audio go together?
Yeah, I think ultimately they're both these sensory and emotional components of how we take in any environment. And some of our most distinct memories, at least I can only speak to myself, but tie in being somewhere other than my day-to-day home and listening to a band or an artist live. And I think that's where the sort of live music component comes in too, because you're sort of drawn into these very emotional, very sensory experiences. And they're such a driver to want to explore and travel and see, the world and culture.
Yeah. The first sound, not to be super deep here, but the first sensory that we actually experience is the sound of our mother's womb. Not to be, again, deep, but thinking about audio from that perspective. And I'm right there with you. It's this conversation itself is making me think, first off, I want to take a trip and I want to hear some live music, but the two do go hand in hand. Bapu, what do you believe the tie-in between audio and travel is?
Now, for me personally, I think the music tells a lot about the people around the world, how they live their lives and what is their kind of attitude towards the life. And what makes me travel is the people. I'm not into that kind of that sites but I'm more into the atmosphere and the people in different destinations. And for example, if I've never been to Cuba, would love to, because I've been introduced to that destination through the music, and I can kind of picture myself a picture of a Cuban and their kind of culture in my head, and that makes me really like fascinated. So I think for me that is the obvious link.
I love that. And Cuba is actually on my bucket list as well. My husband is Cuban Irish, and we've been wanting to go for quite some time. Now, I want to go into the marketing piece of this conversation of how travel and audio go hand in hand. And this is also not only from when a destination or a travel brand activates a marketing campaign, but also the creator standpoint. And so many travel brands have this really strong visual strategy. I think you all touched upon this very briefly, but like, I want to show the destination. I want to show the beaches. I want to show the streets of New Orleans. But how can we bring a travel brand to life via audio? I want to start with Leslie Ann for this piece.
I think it's definitely a critical component of an overall marketing strategy, because marketing is all about two things: the rational and the emotional side of things. The rational would be the assets you deliver in terms of our beautiful beaches here, the wildlife, the natural environment, and that sort of thing. And you can explain those things, kayaking, through the mangroves and stuff like that. But there's also an emotional side to marketing. That's where you actually connect with people. Brain science research actually shows that sound is a critical factor in building strong emotional connections and can therefore enhance memories and motivate listeners to take action. So it's a critical component. I mean, think about it. If you're watching a scary movie and there's no sound involved in that, think about how different the experience is when you actually have the sound on and when you have it off. So it does make a difference, and it's very important for us as travel brands to incorporate that and craft our own sound that is typical or representative of our destination and find ways and means of incorporating that into our strategy overall.
I love that piece of the rational and then the emotional and how you can amplify that via audio. When I was meeting with travel brands, and again, I work on the advertising marketing side of the business, when they would say to me, like, Laura, like, we just have a visual strategy, I would switch it to that they would put together this amazing music bed to their TV spot. And I mean, the artist licensing or just creating their own soundtrack. And so then you get them talking about like, well, why would you invest so much into creating this music bed if you didn't have an audio strategy? Well, we want to have the audio because say someone gets up and they don't hear what's, they want to hear what's happening in the actual TV commercial. I think the same could go from the creator's standpoint. Danielle, I want you to talk a little bit more about podcasts and why, when you're talking with travel creators and travel influencers, what do you tell them of why they need to have an audio strategy as a part of like what they're putting together?
Yes. Well, I would say first that attention spans are very limited, right? So we're in the realm of like 1 minute soundbite like clips or like 1 minute TikTok videos and all of that. However, with podcast, your listeners are willing to be there with you for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So it's a long form medium that allows you to deep dive. And because of the long form of it, and because the listeners are coming back over and over again, you build this intimate connection with the podcast host that is unbreakable. Your listeners will follow you everywhere. And when you are traveling to destinations and you are, let's say, recording on location, that allows you to bring this destination to listeners from all over the world who may not have had a chance to visit that destination before. So in terms of my audience, I have an audience from 75 countries I've never even been to. And every episode, they're listening to something new and refreshing. So it's very exciting. And I think, again, the influence of the host is so special. And that is a critical piece when it comes to your marketing campaign.
Time spent is such a good point. And yet you're with the actual time spent. I mean, Leslie Ann, you know this because of when you're investing in an audio strategy and music and listening destinations on a Pandora, you have an audience that like, yes, your social page is important. Like, let's jump onto Instagram and scroll or get on your Facebook page. But the time spent of them actually listening to the sounds of your destination or the sounds of your brand or listening to your podcast, I don't know anyone that's going to be spending 30 minutes scrolling through your Instagram account. Do you agree? And Leslie Ann, and then would love to also hear from Vapu and Moira there.
Absolutely, Laura. You're so right about that. I mean, the time you can get in terms of engagement from somebody who's actually listening to your podcast is far greater than the 7 seconds or whatever it is you get on social. So it's really a very good, strong vehicle for you to be able to convey your message, to your audience and have it resonate with them, have them get a full feel of the destination, not just what you're saying, but they can actually hear. You have to choose your brand tone and your brand voice and ensure that the person delivering the message is conveying all of that, not just in the content of what they're saying, but in the manner in which they're conveying the information as well.
Yeah, Moira, what would be one tip that you would also give creators and travel brands on like why they need to have an audio strategy?
Yeah, so this plays into sort of my day job, which is overseeing creative commercial placements for artists, and primarily TV and online commercials. And the way that we collaborate quite often with artists and with brands is you have as Danielle mentioned, this limited period of time, whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes. And it's an opportunity to create an emotional connection with your viewers. And by curating that and making it purposeful, it's a way of actually creating a relationship between your viewer and your brand. And so having that thought behind it and really that intent makes it a far more emotional and memorable experience than if it's a passive decision.
Have you ever received pushback?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's a landscape where quite literally a brand can choose to spend, a small amount of budget for a track that might just serve as a passive listening experience. And sometimes that is the right choice because it's just not a poignant part of the creative. But more often than not, there's huge value in associating with an artist or a sound that's authentic to that brand and authentic to that emotional experience that they're trying to convey. And so really establishing the value in that and the value in tying in true creative and artistry, just like you would in hiring a director or a cinematographer to capture accurately, your landscape and your experience. You want to make sure that the audio is authentic to that experience as well.
Yeah, and I think if I comment to this Moira's words is that I think it's just like when I have to admit, like maybe 2 years ago, we were offered quite often, why don't you do podcasts and why don't you do that? And then kind of now when I think also the pandemic has done it in a way that we start to kind of rethink the different senses differently. And it's not only about kind of us going physically somewhere, but like what can you actually experience more when staying at home or staying in a home city? And like what comes to like using the podcasts, I think they are very, very powerful tools or means of marketing. But then you just have to remember that you have to put a really good communication around that so that people actually can find the podcast and can find the added value on that. Then you need the YouTube and maybe the Instagram and the Facebook, whatever. But it's not just like picking one, but just adding into these to your tools of different ways to make marketing. So that is, I think that is crucial to remember.
Yeah, no, but that is such a good point. I mean, the podcast universe is huge. Over 43 million podcast episodes and over 15 billion in listening hours. Danielle, I would love to understand how WOC Podcaster was founded and the hurdles that you faced, because you had to overcome a couple hurdles in developing a travel podcast.
Yeah. So Women of Color Podcasters was founded off of the basis of an opportunity. So there was an opportunity that was published looking for aspiring podcasters who were women of color who had an idea. And I pitched an idea. And one of the questions at the bottom was, what would you like to see different in the industry? So I said, I would love to see a space for women of color, because when I looked at Apple Podcasts, Top 100, I saw only a handful of women of color, and I didn't see myself represented there. So I applied, and I just went ahead and lived my life. And the day that the opportunity was supposed to announce the winners, I went to Twitter looking for who won. And I didn't see who won, but I did see hundreds, if not thousands, of women of color who had applied to this opportunity, who were using this hashtag. So I said, there's no way that we cannot keep in touch with everyone. So we created a Facebook group, and 3 years later, we now have over 4,400 women of color from all over the world who are talking podcasting, starting podcasts. So it's been an incredible journey so far. And how I've seen some of the hurdles that I've overcome and people I've seen as well is I think when it comes to blogging and video, a lot of travel brands understand that medium and they're all for it. But when it comes to podcasting, they're not sure how to get started, or they question the ROI, or they're just not willing to go ahead and create a full campaign. But I have found since the pandemic, since last year, that more travel brands I'm working with are willing to actually like, okay, in addition to a blog post, let's throw in a podcast episode just so we could just get started and you could see what it's like. But over the summer, I'm working with a couple of brands and they're very excited about audio. So I'm just like, yes, this is the right direction that we should be thinking about for sure.
That's such a, very powerful story of how you launched, how this was launched. And I'm agreeing. It's like the video piece, like that's for travel brands and creators, like that's what everyone knows. And to take a step back and actually learn audio and learn podcast, is again, such a really, interesting point. A question just actually popped up that I wanted to bring in. Danielle, are you able to speak a little bit more about the ROI?
Sure. So there's a lot that can happen with podcasts. Podcasts, just like Vapu was mentioning, is that the discoverability is a lot different, because with podcasts, a lot of people discover podcasts through word of mouth, and Google is not as like active compared to like blogging or YouTube or things like that. So that word of mouth is really, really critical when it comes to growing your podcast. But when it comes also to ROI, a lot of podcasts also create show notes in addition to their audio file that lives on their feed forever. And with the show notes, you can create transcripts from the audio and create actually full-blown blog posts from that. And that discoverability, and also that trust from the host, having the host being able to either read an ad or interview the creator or the founder of an organization and give that stamp, like this is something that you should really consider, is really hard to do on other mediums. So there's a lot that you can do with audio. It's not just that one file you get a lot of other capabilities as well.
And I can speak from the brand standpoint. We have a platform like Pandora where we can actually promote the podcast on to travelers via our targeting. And we have this massive audience and scale. Same with Stitcher. It's, all about like the promotion. And then for the travel brand perspective, there's do host reads, you can actually just do straight ads. And there's more and more technology of actually targeting travelers. And that's just people that are talking about travel in specific podcasts. And from a measurability standpoint for a travel brand, we can layer on brand effectiveness studies and look at it from that perspective. I would love
I think if I can get a comment on that one,
yes.
When you see kind of new opportunities, what the podcast can kind of bring to you, we noticed that when working still a lot with the traditional media, which is changing quite rapidly at the moment. So we found that when having this discussion with the PR agencies, more and more they are bringing out the podcasts, because there's also an interest from the traditional media to be part of the podcasts. So it's kind of a win-win situation in a way, so that we can get bigger audiences for our needs, and they have their audiences for their needs, and kind of combining and finding the right path with them is something that is worth investigating for. And we've kind of come up with, like, within 6 months, several opportunities around this, and we are working with those ones with big medias in UK, for example. So it is interesting, and it's definitely now coming more and more into the marketing. How do we see it?
Yeah, where I want to shift the conversation. So we get the scale podcast, but I want to talk a little bit about audio streaming, music streaming specifically. No question, streaming had a massive year. We saw a 32% increase in time spent. And this is based upon convenience, on-demand content, and honestly, the growth of connected home devices. A lot of people were listening at home on their Amazon Alexa or their Google Home. Leslie Ann, how have the beaches of Fort Myers and Sanibel used audio to market the destination to travelers?
Okay, great question. Data drives decisions for us, and we've definitely leaned into the changes that we've been noticing in consumer behavior. And we believe that media mix has to match media consumption. So definitely audio from that standpoint has become a critical component of our overall strategy. We've worked with Pandora, obviously, successfully in the past, and I wanted to share a couple of the things we've done with the Pandora platform. There have been a couple of different tactics that we've used. We've done like 15 and 30-second spots accompanied by in-feed banners and video assets where appropriate. We've done sponsored listening on your stations that align with our core audience. We've also tried to reach persons via connected home and connected car. I think it was Maura who mentioned road trips and how big that was in 2020 and will continue to be. Connected car is going to be very vital because of that. And we actually customize some of our ads to run in our drive markets like Orlando and Tampa and Miami, which much success there. We also did a branded station with Pandora, where we had a mixtape station that conveyed songs that just gave us the vibe and the feeling of the destination, the beaches of Fort Myers and Sanibel. So those are some of the ways we've done work with Pandora. In addition to that, we launched our own podcast. It's called the Shellcast. It launched in June 2020 last year. So far, we've had over 2,500 downloads across 12 countries, and we're very happy with how that's doing. So it's also another way to reach our accessible market because people who are visually impaired can't read or see the images that we're sharing, but the audio is a good component to get destination information out and build that relationship you guys spoke about with our host. That was run by a communications team, and Jackie Parker is our podcast host there. While we're in lockdown too, we also did virtual concerts, something called a Songs from the Sofa series. We have a annual signature event called Island Hopper Songwriter Festival, and we weren't able to execute last year. So we teamed up with all these entertainers out of Nashville, and they've done Songs from the Sofa, which we streamed on social. We actually transitioned to one Songs from the Sand, and we're going to be continuing that until the festival kicks back in September of this year. So those are just some of the ways that we've used audio. We also have done a really cool campaign recently with the New York Times. That's digital customized audio. It's a digital piece, multi-generational family lived 40 years on Sanibel Island. And while you're reading through that piece, you're hearing ambient sounds of the destination while the family is describing what they're doing. It is mind-blowing. We're so excited. It's the first time a destination is doing anything like that with the New York Times. And we are so excited for the results when that will come in. So those are just some quick examples of what we're doing currently, and we'll continue to expand upon our strategy.
Yeah, I was so fascinated with the New York Times piece of obviously playing off of that. When you're reading, you're also hearing. And what I wanted to, this is actually a really great transition into virtual concerts. I mean, I think I said in the beginning, and I probably repeat myself way too much, but this gal is excited for some live concerts. And, but obviously the industry really had to pivot last year, and they're still pivoting. And we are, Pandora as a whole, we are still doing virtual concerts this year. And that is our strategy. But I would love to actually start with Moira on why artists and what this looked like from an artist perspective to shift from those in-person concerts to a virtual concert experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really hard for artists. I will say just first out of the gates, a lot of artists, derive a lot of their energy from performing live. And I think having to transition emotionally to drive into a virtual environment has been really challenging. But simultaneously, it's opened up a lot of opportunities and a lot of opportunities to connect with a bigger fan base. I am so sorry. My puppy is scratching the door. Give me 1 second.
You're totally fine. This is actually a perfect transition for Beppo. You with Helsinki. I mean, you were doing it virtual concerts before virtual concerts were a thing. Would love to understand and go deep into that whole strategy, and then how you execute it. I think how many viewers last year? Over 1 million?
Altogether, within 48 hours, 1.2 million.
Oh, yeah.
Taking into consideration, and it was a Finnish artist, and we are altogether 5 million in Finland. So, but there was quite a good international audience altogether. Yeah, but it's like I can't tell the story in 1 minute. But as a background, where we kind of came from, that the situation concerning the COVID-19 was the same than in the rest of the world in Finland. We were in somewhere like early April, and we have this celebration every year, 1st of May, called Vappu, like my name, and it's a big celebration that people go out to the streets and to the parks to have picnics, enjoy, and kind of welcome the spring together. And because we come from a society where we don't we use carrot instead of stick, so we didn't want kind of to go to the streets and the police to say that you're not allowed to go. So to go out, we needed to find a way to bring people together in a virtual environment and make so kind of appealing for them that they would actually stay inside. So that was the thing why we started to do it. And so kind of that we communicated firstly, of course, through the mayor, and everybody was kind of saying that it's like that we need to celebrate the May Day together as a community, but we can't go outside. What can we? You can actually work on this with us together. So what we came up was a concert. We have this platform already existed, but we've been working for about 2-3 years with the local VR studio Zone. And it is kind of we have already created a virtual Helsinki experience, virtual Helsinki environments. So we came up with an idea that maybe we take an artist from Finland, which is in favor of most of Helsinkians in all like age groups, and put the band into this virtual Helsinki environment. We had the technical solution there first live. Was the platform, but it was still a bit on a test phase. We didn't know exactly if it's going to kind of take in all these people, but we decided to go for it anyways. So we put up this concert, and we felt people were able to join the concert from their home sofas, whether from laptop or from phones or from our like Helsinki channel, and they were able to create an avatar, so to take part in the concert. And then about few thousands of them were able to see themselves waving and making moves in the stream during the concert. And the most active ones were the ones who were able to get in. So we did get a very like an active audience there during the concert. And then what Moira said about this kind of artist's willingness to kind of do this kind of a thing, and especially like before everybody was doing this like virtual concert, was that why this artist wanted to work with us was the thing that they found the technical solution so kind of inspiring and so kind of forward looking. So they thought, okay, we need to experience this. This is like awesome. So, but that was not something that we came up because of the situation, but that's something that we kind of believing in for at least 2-3 years, and kind of going towards the virtual reality strategy, which is similar, I would say, that like audio, virtual reality is also another option to bring your destination to the wider audiences. And like I said, that is like, obviously, you need to communicate it very heavily so that you can get the people in there locally, internationally as well. And even though we didn't kind of see that would there be kind of that much interest in the international audiences towards this concert, because the name of the artist was not a big thing. So we had to kind of put together and tell the story why we are doing this. So why Helsinki is doing it, and that was the thing that we were kind of saying to the people, to the local people, and the international audiences, that Helsinki is not only about taking care of the crisis, but also kind of making sure that we are able to provide something positive, something nice, a kind of the sense of togetherness to this to all Helsinkians and internationally in these kind of difficult times. And that was something that kind of went through also in international PR quite well. So altogether, we've reached a 100 million
That's
audience
incredible
internationally. So as an entity, it was quite a success.
You know, a consistent theme, I think, throughout this whole conversation is how audio brings us together. And while we couldn't be in person and be together last year from a concert standpoint, these experiences with the virtual concerts brought us together. And music and audio does provide that same kind of comfort. I mean, I make this comment. I'm like, you go to any self-care list right now about how to stay sane during all this. Not one says get on social media and scroll. What it does say is listen to some music, go for a walk, have these outdoor experiences. And that's truly what audio, podcasts, and music does for people. Continue on the theme with the virtual concerts. Leslie Ann, you mentioned that this was a part of your strategy. I would actually love to hear from both Vapu and Leslie Ann on this, but any watch outs, any tips for brands that are considering building out a virtual concert strategy? I'll
jump in here. I think it's really just ensuring first and foremost that the concert strategy matches your overall brand strategy. I think for us, it was a natural extension because we had been running our signature event, Island Hopper Songwriter Festival, for I think 6 or 7 years. So people look forward to it every year. And because we couldn't deliver in the pandemic, we thought this was a way of keeping our brand top of mind to our consumers, giving them the music they love from their own sofas. And then we transitioned to one that was from the stand. And we're hoping to have more of those leading up to this year's September event. So I think first, just making sure that it was a natural fit, not forcing it, because forcing it may not work. Making sure it's a natural fit, ensuring you're engaging with your audience. We broadcast on social, but we have our Island Hopper app too. So we were able to send notifications to persons who had come to our event in the past and continue to build on our audience that way. And making sure there's a local component too, because the impact it has had on our local businesses has also been magnificent. And businesses have also suffered during this pandemic. So ensuring that those things are all kept top of mind will be key, I think, to successful execution.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Leslie on that, but I was also kind of add that sometimes when you do something that is not expected from you, it works quite well. So like in this case that we've been working with Virtual Helsinki for quite a long time already, but nobody expected us to kind of bring it in this kind of a use as a platform for a concert and kind of take a so big kind of an emphasis for the music. And I think it's always kind of, we actually did another concert quite soon after this May Day concert, and it didn't attract that much audience. So it's always kind of that you can't kind of take this like take a virtual concert then try to repeat it for the same goals. It doesn't work like that. So you have to kind of think very carefully when the concert is the right way to engage some sort of a audience. So what are you trying to achieve? Because then you could also see it as like there's a virtual concert, there is other kind of means of engaging and trying to attract audiences, attract their interest towards your destination, for example, in our situation. So kind of having the strategy, but keeping it so open in a way that there's always this element of surprising your audience in a way that you are doing something that you're not expected. And when you're coming, for example, like from the brand like Helsinki, which is a very much underdog. You always have to think kind of that, are you doing something that the others has not really done yet? So you kind of try to figure out all the time, what is the new black? What is the new black? So kind of it's a lot about analyzing data and what people are kind of interested in, and try to find something that is not a trend yet, and then you will succeed. I think the best way when you don't have all the money in the world and all the resources in the world. And then there are certain, like I would say, interesting business partnerships that I would kind of be very keen on. So if I would make another virtual concert like Big Way, I would love to work with Unreal Engine and the Epic Games and find a partner basically and work straight with them just to add another element. So that would be something that somebody would not expect for a city small as Helsinki would do. So I'm talking about this kind of unlike alliances, let's say that.
Okay. No, these are two really good points of like, making sure, as Leslie Ann has said, like, is it a part of your strategy? Is a travel brand or a destination? Are they thinking about it? Obviously, it was already a building concert, or do you go the route of the unexpected? Moira, I would love to get a better handle on the artist perspective, because you were bringing up some good points of obviously artists had to pivot. So what is their perception of the virtual concerts? Like, what are they thinking about?
Yeah, I think initially, it was just this desire to connect with their fan base. And what's evolved over the course of the past year that I've observed is that they've become really creative in this very new platform of engaging virtually. And so there's a bit of confidence that's developed of this new medium of reaching their fan base. And it's really cool to see. We had artists doing a show from the back of each of their vans. And, so it was distance, but also created this really cool landscape. Speaking of travel, actually, one of our artists is in Bali, and he was able to connect with a whole new fan base he had not been engaged with previously because people were more open to consuming virtually. And I think to tie it back to Bapu and Leslie Ann, like, what's so great to hear about both of your experiences is you're opening up your destinations to people that hadn't necessarily considered them before. Mm-hmm. And we all get in habits of travel and habits of tourism because we love a place and have an emotional connection. But to use this downtime of travel to actually open yourselves up to a whole new consumer and a whole new sort of base of your own is just like such a cool strategy. And I think it really parallels with how artists have dealt with it as well.
What an incredible point. Is obviously both destinations were able to expand their reach and expand who they were able to speak to. Because at the time of last year, we maybe couldn't travel to that destination, but we could still be inspired by that destination. So when it was deemed safe to travel, we would choose that destination to travel to. And the driving the inspiration and keeping the dream alive of travel was done so well through these virtual concerts and creating the sounds of the destination through these listening destinations, whether there was on Pandora or another streaming platform. Just because we have 10 minutes left, and I do want to touch on two other topics. One is I want to hear from all of you on what are some of the innovative things that are being done in the audio space. This could just be in general or travel related. Danielle, you want to start?
I'm so excited about private RSS feeds. That's something that is new and emerging. So a lot of travel content creators are creating like audio courses or audio books that they can actually distribute straight to their folks through private RSS feeds, which is very, very exciting. So I'm really excited about that.
I was not familiar with that, so now I've learned something. Thank you, Danielle.
Sure thing.
Leslie Ann, what is something new in the audio space that you're seeing?
Well, we're definitely paying attention to what's happening with audio social. Clubhouse has like taken off in the last year. And I see where Twitter already has spaces and Facebook is working on their own audio rooms. LinkedIn is also working on some sort of beta testing. We haven't quite figured out yet how we can use it from a destination standpoint, but I think it's only a matter of time. So we're watching that, and our agency's watching that closely.
Moira.
Yeah, so obviously TikTok has become this huge, monstrous platform for artists. And it's really empowered a lot of up and coming artists to be able to connect with potential fans and to, not only display creativity, but also sort of find their own brand and their own aesthetic. And I'm just so impressed with how much creativity it's bred. And I think that, people like to sometimes throw shade at how short the formats are, et cetera. But in that, you don't have to overcommit to any sort of creative direction, and you can explore and you can be silly, and it creates this very human platform for artists to engage with fans.
I'm right there with you. Bapu.
Actually, I don't know if I can kind of pick up any like a specific example, but as general, I would say that when being kind of looking at the different stakeholders that we kind of like destinations work closely with, is like the museums, which are very kind of this traditional in their marketing and in their doing, and kind of losing their audiences. Now I kind of noticed that whether it's the pandemic or most likely that's one of the reasons, that they kind of started to rethink how to kind of reach new audiences, and they've been starting to do all these like audio tours and all other possible tours. So I think that's a good example on kind of what is the direction that we are going. Even the traditional ones can understand in a way that we have to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, it is even with Leslie Ann, your example of the New York Times is when you're reading and you also have that that audio component. So it is now, if you are going to have a visual strategy, whether it is just walking through the museum and seeing everything there, but also having that audio piece. I can speak to the marketing standpoint of something that we've developed is voice interactive audio ads. So you can actually talk to audio ads. And if you want to engage with a brand's message, you can say yes. So Pandora, we have the technology to actually say, hey, Pandora, play Rufus Del Sol Radio. And so now we're incorporating that into audio ads. So when you're driving and you may be hands-free, that you can actually talk to the audio ad and receive more information. And that voice talk and people being comfy with using voice is something that's just going to keep growing more and more. I think I will say the generation, a little bit younger generation, I get more of those voice audio notes versus text messages. And I used to find them pretty annoying. I was like, I don't want to listen to them while I'm here in the audio space. But now it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to text anymore. I send voice audio notes all day long.
Yeah, I have my kids, they are 11 and 13. They keep on doing that. I'm not going to type. And then they have this like a big, long story there on a WhatsApp or online. But that tells that we are where we are going. So it's, yeah.
I would say they're sound like they are future podcasters. You should set them up with Danielle. Okay, we have just a couple more minutes, and I do want to leave with some advice. We have some marketers on the phone, we have content creators, and what would the top piece of advice that you would give them if they're looking to build out an audio strategy? Moira, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a multi-layered question, but ultimately it comes down to being honest to your brand. And in the same way that you want to be honest to your brand and in any other sensory interaction, whether it be tangible in person or in visuals that you're using. The audio needs to tie into that overall brand aesthetic, and any departure should be for the purpose of delight and surprise. So it doesn't mean you can't take risks. Sometimes risks are really valuable, but really making sure that it ties into what you're trying to, convey as an overall brand. And some very easy first steps to make it, a sort of doable process to anyone, even a small brand, is just to identify the aesthetics, visual aesthetics that you possess as a brand, and then to listen through music and decide what you feel like aligns with those visual aesthetics. And I think there's a lot of power in just being open-minded and experiencing it yourself before you align it with something for your consumers.
I love that piece of advice, and honesty and being authentic to your brand is so important. Leslie Ann.
Oh, I definitely add to what Mara said. I think the brand is first, being true to your brand. I also think you have to tap into your audience as well, drill down to get the insights. What are their habits? What are their interests? What devices are they using most? So that will all help you to build out the strategy so that you have that alignment between what your brand wants to be in terms of to the consumer and what they're actually doing. And I think overall too, just in general, we've seen a seismic shift recently from a look at me type content to a learn from me. So ensuring that the messaging is accurate, it doesn't have to be educational in terms of stoic and academic, but edutainment, like a TikTok, your people who are actually delivering messages in an entertaining format. So ensuring you have all of that within your mix as well is also going to be key.
I love that. And again, the learning piece is so important, and understanding who your customer is. Danielle.
I would say if you're a content creator, don't be afraid of the tech. It's a lot easier than you think it is. And secondly, to be open to different formats. So podcast doesn't have to be necessarily an interview. It can be so much more than that. So you could use interview as a base, but there's a lot of options besides just what we're used to.
Love that. And Vapu.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of these great ladies. Just like to add it, what we talk about, like being a true to your brand, that's very important. But then also at the same time, try to be creative and different. What differentiates you from the other brands that you are kind of competing towards? That is important. And then kind of, I think it's like being true to your brand is also like kind of, in a way, I could put it like that. If you want to use audio, that if for example, silence is crucial to your brand, so why don't you make it as an asset in the world of sounds? So kind of try to think it differently. There's so many things going on in the world.
Yeah, I am right there with you, and the creativity piece is so important. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm serious that we got to get the list of all our podcast recommendations, our music recommendations up, because everyone gave some really good feedback. Thank you so much for everyone that tuned in, and thank you, Vapu, Moira, Leslie Ann, and Danielle. This has been an amazing conversation. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good Monday.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.